What's up, guys? Keyshawn Uchiha here, back at you with another part to an OT universe, and this will be part 2 of What If I Was in the SCP Foundation. You know it, the one, the only, Keyshawn Uchiha, the Galaxy God, a round table of all the other gods. And we're going to see how I do in the SCP Foundation Part 2. Now, if you haven't watched Part 1, please watch Part 1. I'm going to do a quick recap, and also I have an announcement to make. I will be doing I will be doing a live broadcast stream of For Honor because since the new update of a new character come out, I'm going to be broadcasting the new character and what the new character can do and stuff because I'm very excited about that. And also, I will be doing another video today. This 2 videos today and a broadcast. So if you hoping y'all would like to enjoy my broadcast to check out what I'm going to be doing, I hope y'all guys join. I'll be very happy to see y'all. And also, hit that like button. Get this up to 20 likes or whatever. And I will do another part to this, if y'all ask of it. But in further ado, let's do a quick recap and let's get started. So where last pretty much left off, Keyshawn Uchiha pretty much found one of the you could say SCP agents, the field operators, pretty much showing him that what power he can do, and letting the field operators pretty much capture him. After that, they pretty much had Keyshawn at the table, and Dr. Alice. Keyshawn, you could say scientist, or you could say supervisor, was watching or questioning Keyshawn at what he knows, and Keyshawn Chi was pretty much explaining that he seen the SCP Foundation in multiple universes. One has kids, protecting the world, one has adults, one has teenagers, and one has old people. And one has as a cult, or one has, villains, but they still kept the world safe. But they used the things that their own means necessary to get power and stuff, and one that's corrupted. Now, this is where Dr. Ellis, is given by the higher access and stuff, being promoted, but also have to keep watch on Keyshawn Chia since he's the Galaxy God, and if anything happens to that facility stuff, she would get terminated, which that put fear in her. After that, Keyshawn Uchiha been going around and also met the plague doctor and also met the little girl. This is where you could say, go back in his room, got 2 SD class to watch over him. Well, you could say his kid self, while he goes up to the round table, while his clone self, take over, and he's going to be, you could say, coming back. Further ado, after all that quick recap, let's get going. So, Keyshawn Chia pretty much created another clone for the Galaxy Roundtable, and pretty much went back down to the SCP Foundation to pretty much have his fun. Now this is where he goes down, and his clone, his kid self, is still, you could say, still there. Which this is where he, you could say, meet up with his kid self and pretty much begins to head out his cell. Now this is where you could say the 2 Class Ds start following Keyshawn and Kid Keyshawn. And this is where Kid Keyshawn says, I'm gonna go be playing with the little girl, the SCP 053, which this is where Keyshawn says, go ahead, I gotta talk to Dr. Alice. Anyways, which he says, alright. Now this is where Dr. Alice and Keyshawn had their seat, but not in a secret room to have their talk. They're pretty much talking at the scientists, you could say at the break room where all the scientists and stuff go to, and the guards. Now this is where, Dr. Alex is saying why we're talking here, which Keyshawn says, listen, I want everybody to hear this and hear our conversation. This is going to be very important. Now, this is where Keyshawn Uchiha begins to explain and says, alright everybody, including you, Dr. Alice, listen up. And the higher ups, because I know y'all listening. There's an end of the world scenario about to happen. All y'all humans, all the humans y'all love, y'all family members, and every thing y'all have a feeling for, affection on, is about to die. Which this is where Dr. Alice is in a code set saying how they're going to die. This is where Keyshawn Uchiha begins to say, well, I'll be honest with you. This is how y'all are gonna die. I seen this being happen before. And this being's gonna be coming to the facility, and he's going to this being's gonna come to the facility first, and he's going to start a big nuke. This massive nuke wave is going to blow everything around us to hell, including, you could say, the whole world. Now, what I need y'all to do is to make sure you keep everything in check and make sure nothing goes in chaos. Because when this thing comes, it's going to destroy everybody. And what its first reaction is going to do is trying to grab the SCP, the Plague Doctor, because it needs the Plague Doctor to pretty the fuse together to create, you could say, death itself, the reincarnation of death. And the Plague Doctor is death. You could say he is the healer, but he's also the death can win for. Which they're pretty much saying, okay. Now, this is where, of course, the next day comes, and this is where Keishon Chia is going to see the Nine-Tailed Fox, or you could say the Nine-Tailed Fox SCP, and he begins to talk to her. Now, as they're talking to each other, this is where Keishon says, you know, in the other alternate universe, you escaped this facility, and you met a person named Deku. You and him kind of form a relationship bond together. Oh yeah? Which she's asking, oh yeah? Then, what do we do after that? Have children? Which, this is where Keisha, she laughs and says, you're right on the hat. I would like to say, yeah, y'all kind of did, and y'all lived happy. Y'all lived happy, living in a house. You didn't eat humans anymore. Of course, no. You had your own meal and stuff, and had your own house, had your own children, you was happy. In this alternate universe, it's quite different. Hell, maybe things might change. But right now, I gotta save your ass to save everybody else's asses here. Now, this is where the Fox, you could say the SCP, begins to try to stop Keishon, which Keishon says, listen, if you want more questions, I'll talk to you later. But other than that, I gotta get going. Now, this is where Keishon is going to all the other SCPs, and he meets, the SCP who can heal, but, he takes the wounds from a person who got, injured. Now, this is where Keishon begins to heal the boy. He begins to heal the boy, curing him from all the cuts and wounds and stuff, and fixing his, you could say, his ability, and making it different. He's making his ability be kind of like Love Train, as he still has the abilities to take away autism and stuff, but instead of going to him, and he's having all the stuff, it will go to someone else, far, far away. So it's kind of like Love Train. Kind of like that. So, this is where, the boy is looking and saying, what did you do? Which, this is where Keishon says, well, I healed you because I'm going to need you for a very poor reason. The thing is going to be trying to come in after you, so that's why I kind of gave you a kind of upgrade or evolution. Now, this is where, the SCP Foundation, and this is where Keishon Chia says, alright, have all the SCP kids be together because that thing is going to be trying to come for them, and I'm going to have to fight this thing. Now, this is where the thing comes, and he crashed down, saying, I know they're here. I'm here to grab them, to create the ultimate death, the beauty of it all, to erase it all. No, this is where Keishon Chia begins to head out and says, I saw you destroy another alternate universe before, and the SCP Foundation had to die. They had to erase itself to protect the human race. And I'm not going to let them do it this time, so I'm going to fight you. This is where the thing says, you really think you're going to fight me? I am the end. I am all that's supposed to die. I am that you speak of in your dreams, but you will never remember. Which this is where Keishon Chia says, blah, 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 that remember and all that. And this is where Keishon Chia blitzes him and begins to slice him in pieces. Now, this is where the thing gets cut, and he gets up and says, that was a good cut. Which Keishon says, I'm not done yet, and begins to do, you could say, a trickster long kick down to the face, down to the ground. Now, this is where the SCP Foundation is recording this fight. Pretty much, putting in history, writing it all down, as you're seeing. And Keishon's pretty much picking up the lead and pretty much punching him in the gut, sending him flying again. Now, this is where the being says, "That's it," and shoots a beam at Keyshawn. Now, this is where Keyshawn is pretty much about to get hit with the beam until one Class D, like I said, got trained, begins to summon a weapon and deflect it with a similar blade, and says, "Are you alright, sir?" Which, this is where Keyshawn says, "Of course I'm alright. But remember, don't try to protect me, I can handle myself. I need you to protect them, so that beam doesn't go after them." Which they say, "Understood, sir," and they go back. Now this is where Keyshawn's running at the beginning. This is where Keyshawn runs in. Pretty much started to barrage punches him multiple times. Kinda like a shotgun, but like with fists. Now, the being's coughing up blood and stuff, and this is where Keyshawn, kicks him, well, you could say knee him in the face multiple times, and just says, "You're not going to destroy this world," and knees him to the wall, send him flying into the wall. Now, this is where the being is, you could say, down for the count, and he's about to get up one more time until Keyshawn just says, "All right," and knives, and summons some knives and throws down on him so he can't get up, and he's pretty much down. Now this is where the personnel are all about to capture him, and all that, until Keyshawn says, "No, y'all not gonna capture this guy. If you do capture him, he's just gonna escape. None of y'all weapons or materials will help y'all to stop him, and I'm gonna have to keep trying to stop him every time." This is where Keyshawn summons a light beam, and he begins to throw a light at him. And he pretty much says, "Heaven's a sin," and erase him from existence and everything. Now, this is where the SCP Foundation begins to in all witness Keyshawn just stop a being from creating an end of the world scenario, and Keyshawn sits down, pretty much taking a breather, and he pretty much says, "You got my thing?" Which they say, "Yes, sir, of course." And they give him his signature, lollipop. You could say the bubblegum blow pop from best of the kind. And they gave him cherry, which he says, "Thanks." Now, this is where you could say the higher ups seen the video of Keyshawn pretty much, stopping the end of the world scenario to pretty much stop. And they pretty much put him as safe. Alright, sorry about that. Sorry for pausing like 3 times. I am really sorry about that. But let's continue. Pretty much the higher table pretty much put Keyshawn, or you could say put SCP-0 as me, you could say, as SCP-0 as class safe. Put him as safe, because he's not a safe, he's not a killer or not a nuclear, he's a safe, after what he just showed his power to witness. Now, after all that, this is where the higher ups begins to want to see Keyshawn. For the first time ever, the higher ups want to see actually an SCP, which Dr. Alice is supposed to be accompanying Keyshawn. Which this is where Alex is a little bit scared. Which Keyshawn looked at her and pretty much told her, chill out. You're gonna be fine. In all the alternate universes, I never saw once of an Alex before. Well, yeah, I've seen an Alex, but regularly she's not important. But you're the only Alex I ever knew who's important, who survived, and ever witnessed a person actually defeating something. Have you ever heard of that? Crazy, huh? Now, this is where, of course, Alex is cooling down and saying thanks for that, which Keyshawn says, "Oh, it's nothing. Now let's go talk to him." Now, of course, this is where you could say Keyshawn Uchiha and Alex begins to head to the council table. Now, this is where they're all, not showing their faces and stuff. And this is where Keyshawn looks, and he says, "Whoa, these guys are powerful. These guys are higher power. You can tell." they're all in the shadows and stuff, and you know, showing their authority of fear. I mean, oh, sorry, with all due respect, hello, council. Now, this is where you could say the council members are not saying anything, and they begin to, you can hear one of them begin to do a little laugh, but they're pretty much saying, SCP-0, we have been informed that you saved one of our sites from having the end of the world scenario and multiple SCPs. Can you tell us the reason why you did that? Which this is where Keyshawn Chia begins to look down and says, you know, I didn't save the facility just for the SCPs. I kind of did save the facility for the SCPs because the SCPs are my favorite. They might be monsters to y'all, but they're family to me since I'm an SCP. And also, the little girl, she doesn't have a family, and I treat her as I'm like her brother to her. So that's why I saved it. And also, Dr. Alice, I kind of have a thing for her, which Dr. Alice blushes and begins to look away. Now, this is where you could say the SCP Foundation begins to all talk to Keyshawn. They begins to ask him more questions and stuff and saying, so, is it anything you want to say? Is there anything else you'd like to ask me, Foundation? Which this is where they're all saying, this is all they're saying right now. They're saying, nothing. This is all we want to ask. But we will be calling you eventually to ask more questions. This is where Keyshawn says, alright, well, that's it. Okay, see you. And this is where Keyshawn grabs Dr. Alex's hand saying, come on. But she says, oh, okay. And they say, oh, Dr. Alice, before you go, we have gave you the highest stats that you can be in. And you will be watching over Keyshawn in the new site. And not a new site, but in the same site, but you will have a higher authority. You'll be the boss manager at that site. Which Dr. Alice saying, me? Which Keyshawn says, oh, congratulations! Now I can do whatever I want. Which the Foundation, with the higher ups looks at him, which Keyshawn says, I'm joking. But come on, Alex, let's go. And they pretty much go. Now, after they head back to the Foundation and stuff, this is where Keyshawn pretty much talked to Alex. I'm so sorry, guys, that happened. I'm really sick and tired of my sister and everybody's just messing with me. I'm trying to do videos. But other than that, I'm real sorry. Let's continue the goddamn process so we can, get done with this video and try to do the next video. But other than that, this is where, everybody's, saying congratulations to Dr. Alex for getting promoted to higher up and higher commission, which this is where, Keyshawn she is saying, you see, I told you you were going to make history with yourself, which this is where she thanks him because, it's all because of him. If he wasn't here, she wouldn't be, any higher up and just probably just earn her ranks and probably earn her ranks at all, which Keyshawn looks at her and says, nah, you still earn your ranks. See, if I wasn't here. And this is where Keyshawn begins to head back to his, you could say, cell. We can just say, well, I'm going to be going to sleep now. If you need anything, just call me. I'm going to go to sleep. Or if you want me to be one of the Class T test subjects, because, I want to be a test subject sometimes. But she says, okay. And this is where Keyshawn goes to sleep. This is where Keyshawn, hits the bed and goes to sleep. Now, this is part 2 of what if, I was in SCP, the SCP Foundation. If you like, leave a like, comment, and all that stuff. But I'm Keyshawn Chia. Thanks for watching, and peace out.
Looks like you lost another one.